Hey everyone, Rob here, and today I'm going to be better showing you how to secure DNS in your home or work environment. The first thing I want to cover here relates to the client side, which we're going to cover disabling protocols that can be used against you in a negative way, and then we're also going to enable DNS over HTTPS. After that, we're going to cover the server-side protections. So starting with DoH, or DNS over HTTPS, I have a cmdlet here that I made, and I'll have a link to it in the description, and it can be used to simply enable or disable DNS over HTTPS on a device. So you'll notice I'll have two switches here. The first one is restart. That is so that if you define this, you are telling the computer to restart after setting the setting. If you use undo, you are deleting the registry value that gets created. And in essence, that is basically all this script or this cmdlet does, is create a registry value in HKey local machine, system, current control set, services, DNS cache parameters. We're creating a value, a dword value called Enable-DoH, and setting the decimal value to 2. And just to show you right now, if I open my registry, the value does not exist by default. It has to be created. This is also newer for Windows 10 operating systems. I believe they said it was like 19628 and above are capable of using DNS over HTTPS. So what I'm going to do right now is simply enable it by doing Enable-DoH. That's all you got to do. And actually I'm going to add the verbose parameter to tie me into my next thing here, and you can see it says enabling DNS over HTTPS for all Windows applications. This means any Windows queries to the internet for DNS are going to be sent over an HTTPS tunnel whenever possible. There are also debates on whether DNS is actually privatizing you or not. I don't want to get off on too much of a rant here, but your internet service provider will collect data on you and sell it, and they don't like the idea of people using DNS over HTTPS, so I'm a supporter of it. If I open my registry settings again here, we can see Enable-DoH is set to 2, and that means basically that we have it enabled and on. And it's that simple. Now DNS over HTTPS is enabled on your device. If you use, your browsers are a different story, such as Firefox and Chrome, and whatever other browser you might use, Brave. These are set individually in the browser settings. So just to show you here, to make it simple, in Firefox, if I click the three drop downs here, go to Options, then here you can simply search DNS and then click on the Settings button, and you'll see at the bottom it's enabled automatically. Firefox is one of the more private browsers that are better browsers you can configure for privacy, and also their default provider is Cloudflare, which is awesome. If you don't know much about Cloudflare, they are DNS 1.1.1.1 and 1.1.0.1. They're all about privacy, and they do awesome things too. If you have a website, like cache your site, and if the server goes down, they still serve your site up from a cached location, so people can use it, giving you basically 0% or 100% uptime in theory. I'm not sure because I don't have a store, but it might be different if you're making payments on something. I don't know offhand if that relates to you. You'll have to check it out, but Cloudflare is awesome. If you're not using them already, you should definitely check them out. So that's Firefox there. Chrome makes it more difficult. Chrome is not really an advocate for privacy. They are more looking to take advantage of your browsing habits and such. But if you want to turn on DNS over HTTPS, you need to go to Chrome://flags and then DNS over HTTPS. Here, what I had to do, since I went to that site, there's a ton of settings here, and it's basically all the way down the page. So the easiest way to find it, let's see if this search works. I can do DNS here. There we go. And you can see support for HTTP, SSVC records, and DNS shows up. Simply select the drop down and select enabled in order to enable it. So that is how you enable that there. That is basically all there is to DNS over HTTPS. It's just sending your traffic through a tunnel. The next thing I want to cover is the use of NetBIOS. So I took a Wireshark capture here to show you some packets. Here's a NetBIOS request here. You can see by the NBNS. DNS is, of course, a DNS protocol, which is not encrypted, so you can see what's being asked for. So here there was a query for v10.events.data.microsoft.com. If we come down here a little bit more, where are they? We can see our there we go, our NBNS or NetBIOS requests, and you can see what's going on here is desktop 1, which is not the computer I'm on, is advertising itself to the neighbors. This won't go past the router, but it will go to anyone else nearby on the LAN. The issue with this is it's creating a lot of unnecessary traffic. The device is announcing itself, I believe, every 30 seconds. Saying, hey, this is my host name, and it also will, NetBIOS is known to request names of the neighbors around it. And the downside to this is there's no authentication or integrity to the responses in that communication. So an attacker can take advantage of that to spoof services and pretend to be things they are not. So I'm going to demonstrate that so you can get an idea what that's like. To do this, I'm going to use a tool called Inveigh. So what I'm doing right now, actually what I have to do first, because Windows Defender Firewall will catch this. Don't do this unless you know what you're doing. I haven't checked out Inveigh.ps1 already, and I know it's not going to execute any code that is malicious or taking advantage of my computer in any way. So I'm going to do set MP preference, set MP preference, and then we want to disable real-time monitoring, and disable real-time monitoring, and then set that to true because I want to disable it. And then what I can do is contact the internet and import Inveigh.ps1, the contents of that file, execute it in my session using invoke expression here. And that allows me to use the commandlets that exist inside Inveigh.ps1. And one of those is invoke Inveigh, which I'm going to execute here to start our listener. And you can see we want to sprint output to the console. And we want to set this up for NetBIOS, NBNS, which you can see is in Wireshark as well, MDNS, which is multicast DNS, and over an HTTPS through the proxy. If these are not defined, you're not going to be able to capture the hash. I haven't looked too much into the tool where I know why, but that just seems to be needed here. So now I'm starting the listener. Oh, it's already running, great. So, what we're going to do now is if I go to another computer and open up File Explorer, we're going to connect to Desktop 01 using SMB, or the File Management Protocol. So to do that, I go // we're going to do the IP address, we can go to 142C, and everything looks normal. So if I'm an admin or a user, this all looks like normal stuff to me. However, on this side, if we do get Inveigh-NTLM-v2, we can see I've captured an NTLM-v2 hash. You'll notice if I do NTLM-v1, there's no hash, which is good. If you can avoid using NTLM version 1 in your environment, you should, because those hashes are capable of being passed to other services, and they're also crackable. The NTLM-v2 is much harder to crack because there's the time gets factored. Well, I'm getting off topic. We want to stay on DNS. So DNS, we can capture the hash, and that's what we don't want attackers to do. So to secure that, we need to disable NetBIOS LLMNR as well as multicast DNS wherever we can. In order to do that, we would go to our control panel settings. So let's go from scratch. We'll open control panel. And then in control panel, we would go to Network and Sharing Center, which is here. And then we want to select our NIC, which is Ethernet 0 in my case here. And then I go to Properties and TCP/IP version 4, Properties, Advanced, and then Wins. And here we can see LMHOSTS Lookup is enabled, as well as NetBIOS. The default option is to use your DHCP assignment settings. If you have a Windows DHCP server, which I don't have one set up on here, but you would go into that, and then under your scope options, you would right-click on Scope Options, go to Properties, and then under Microsoft Windows 2000, you want to make sure you disable NetBIOS from being used in those settings. So here what we're doing, this checkbox, another thing, even though it's checked by default, the LMHOSTS file does not exist by default. So by leaving this checked, an attacker can create a file for the LMSHOST file and then import their own attack machine to get you to contact them instead of other devices, say as like a spoof. So we're going to uncheck that, and we want to disable NetBIOS over TCP/IP. This is something you can do in your home environment. And then as soon as I click OK and then close, once I get back to this window, the settings are applied. So I'm going to close this. Now if you're in a domain environment, you may be thinking, well, what am I supposed to do that on every computer? And your first thought might be group policy. However, there is no group policy setting that can be used to configure that. Which means we have to use a startup script. So I'm going to have a link to the startup script in the description here. Notice here we are in the group policy settings, and I'm going to show you how we set all that up for disabling NetBIOS in a domain environment. And under my settings here, I'm going to right click on the policy, go to Edit, go to Computer Configuration, Policies, Windows or Administrative Templates, Network, and then DNS Client. And then at the bottom here, we want to turn off multicast name resolution. And you can see this is what disables LLMNR. And this is the protocol that is basically, say, NetBIOS requests. However, it works with IPv6 and IPv4, where NetBIOS only works with IPv4. So that's how to disable LLMNR in your domain environment. The other setting I have configured here that we need to go to is in our preferences, Windows settings. I drop that down, and then registry. I don't have a I don't have a registry item created here. That's in a different group policy. Sorry, guys. The other thing I have configured is a startup script. That's what I want to show you. So if I go to policies, Windows settings, and then scripts, and then startup, we can see under PowerShell scripts I have the domain controller's net logon location for a script called startup.ps1. To access the script, there's basically two locations to know. There's your DC net logon. However, if I open the file from here, I won't be able to edit it. The location on your domain controller is C, Windows, sysvol, domain scripts. And that's where I have startup.ps1. The first thing we are doing is using sim, which is the replacing WMI basically, which is a good thing because WMI, they have some duplicate values. So when you call a method, you have to be specific in when you call, we'll just say a method or an object, namespace, thank you. No, class name, oh my gosh. So they have duplicate class names basically, and also when you set parameters in PowerShell using WMI or Windows Management Instrumentation, you have to know all the required parameters in order to modify them, which means you have to look them up. Whereas with sim, you only need to modify the ones that you want to. The other thing with WMI is I mentioned the duplicates. There's another thing I just left my mind, but it's not that important. So here you'll see with our sim instance, we are setting our TCP NetBIOS option to 2, and what that 2 means is disabled. 1 means enabled, and 0 means default. Rely on the DHCP server settings. The second one here, we are disabling the use of the LMHOSTS file, and basically what these Boolean values do is uncheck that box that says use the LMHOSTS file. In case you forgot what those were here, I'm just going to get back there real quick to show it. So this box gets unchecked is basically all I'm saying. And when I said that this is value 2, this is value 1, value 0, value 2. So that's that part. So that is how we would configure the script. I'll have this available in a link in the description of the video, so you can use this in your environment if you like. I suggest using the code signing script. This is very important to use because if this is not signed and your execution policy is not set to PowerShell remote signed, the script can be modified by an attacker to do whatever they want. With the signature here, it ensures that no changes have been made to the script. So the other thing about that is, say I'm an attacker, and if there's no thing here, and now the script runs every time the computer starts up. If I upload netcat to the machine and issue a simple command that executes a reverse shell, now every time the computer is restarted, I'm gaining a connection to the computer, which creates a type of persistence into the network. And if this is running a system or an administrator, which typically it is, I now have access to that machine with those elevated permissions, which we definitely don't want. So that is why you want to use your code signing certificate to sign any scripts you have running through a task or startup, such as this. So that is the startup script, and that is also disabling NetBIOS and LLMNR. The next thing we're going to cover is the server side. And with the server, we are going to, there's a couple things to check first. So right now I'm on my domain controller / DNS server, which is very typical to do. We're going to go to Tools, DNS. I have this roles and features, Windows optional feature installed already, so I'm not going to cover how to do that. Notice in my forward lookup zones, I have Osborne Pro here. If I right click on that and go to properties, I can go to the zone transfer section, and we want to make sure this is either disabled, or if this is enabled, you want to make sure it's only going to the following servers. If you do have this enabled, allowing zone transfers, I have another script I'll put in the description that is used, should be set up as a task, and it will send you an email alert anytime a zone transfer is performed, letting you know the device that attempted the transfer, or the IP address that attempted the transfer, along with some other information. This way, you know if an attacker is doing this, your vulnerability scanner is attempting this, or it's just normal DNS information flowing. On Linux, typical ways to perform a zone transfer would be something like host-l and then your domain controller. So this would be one way. If I had that enabled, issuing this command is going to give me all the information in the DNS registry. So I can basically enumerate an environment without having to interact with it, which is what you don't want an attacker to be that quiet, that's for sure. The other way to do it is using dig axfr. I'm pretty sure this is the @domain controller, and then the domain comes after it, but it might be opposite, where that @ symbol goes in front of the domain instead of the domain. I can't remember offhand, but that's basically the other way to do it there. There's other tools out there, but these ones are free and come on the system, and they're easy to use. So that is the zone transfer section. Simple to I'm just going to turn it off for mine because I don't need it. The other thing that we want to protect DNS with is DNSSEC. And what that does is prevent impersonations. So if I'm a client and I want to know the DNS resolution of something, I'm going to request it from the DNS server, which is using signatures to verify that this record is indeed from the domain controller and this is the record associated with that address. This prevents, as I had just mentioned, impersonations. It's easy to set up on a Windows server. Simply right-click on your lookup zone here, and then go to DNSSEC and sign the zone, and that will take you through the setup process. Selecting the defaults for everything is pretty much fine. There is one setting I change on my way through, which I change a 1024-bit key to a 2048-bit key, and I believe this is on the key signing key, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see, if I right-click here and go to Properties, no. What do I want to do? DNSSEC Properties. The key master ZSK. I think it's the ZSK is the one that I changed to 2048. But as you can see, just to show you what my settings are, I have the key length set to 2048 on the ZSK. The key signing key also set to 2048. My key master, the DNS server, this is my primary domain controller, the primary DNS server, so that's why I have this set as the master. NSSEC, we're using the latest version, NSSEC 3 instead of NSSEC. And in Trust Anchor, you will want to enable this checkbox here so that your DNS server can pass DNSSEC records and such to the other domain or DNS servers in your environment. And advanced, you can see I'm using SHA-1 and SHA-256 for my record generation algorithms. Active Directory is great about handling key signing and signatures and such for the DNSSEC communications. So it's best practice typically to put your DNS server on an Active Directory server anyway, but it just helps things work smoothly and faster when they're on the same thing. And as you can see here, we have all these RRSIG and NSSEC 3 get added automatically after you install DNSSEC 3. It's not like those need to be configured individually. And now with those configured, what I can do is things such as Resolve-DnsName, name ca.osbornepro.com, and then I'm going to use the server dco1.osbornepro.com, DNSSEC only, and you can see how great it works. The other thing we can do is a reverse lookup. Now the thing about the reverse lookups, if I do 192.168.137.142, you can see we get our answer here. And I did enable DNSSEC. However, if you look at my reverse lookup zones, I don't have any special signatures there. If I right-click on the zone, I can, if I want, sign the zone using DNSSEC. However, it's not something you need to do, and it's not something you should do because it's not meant to go there. It's meant to be in your forward lookup zones. Just to make sure, the other thing that needs to be done with DNSSEC is through group policy. You need to go to your default domain policy and right-click and go to Edit. And then under Policies, Windows Settings, Name Resolution is where we would set our configuration. So down here at the bottom, you can see I have my Osborne Pro namespace with the CA defined. So what we would do if we were setting this up in our suffix here, we want this to apply to, say, roberthosborne.com. Certificate authority, I would click Browse, and then I can click More Choices and choose any certificate authority I'd like. And then once that is selected, I would enable DNSSEC in this rule, and I want validation enabled here as well. And that would then I would click Create, and I would see that in my value down here. And that would get applied out to the clients in the environment, ensuring that they use DNSSEC. And that is all I have for you. So thanks everyone for watching. Leave comments and questions in the comments. Thank you.